What's up, and welcome back to another episode of the Steel Curtain Podcast. I'm your host, Tommy Jaggi, editor of SteelCurtain.com, and joining me as always is Steel Curtain contributor and co-host Shayne Kubas. Shayne, the Steelers are coming off a Week 1 win, and I don't think that there's anybody that would have expected this point total goes to 66 in this game. I think it was 38 and a half is where it finished prior to the start of the game. Wild stuff. We don't see this often from the Steelers, who typically win these slugfest, grind it out type of games, low scoring. That's what we anticipated. That's not what we got, Shayne.
No, and in some ways it's not so great. To be fair, we're going to talk about that. There's some certainly negatives from this game, but a lot more positives than I thought there'd be, especially on the offense. So we'll definitely talk about it, but it's certainly more fun to watch than your average Steelers game has been for quite some time. So I guess I'll take that.
Yeah, it was entertaining to say the least. We're going to talk about the issues in the trenches and where the Steelers go from here. The gross misuse of some of the players, Shayne, that we've been talking about for a while now. We're going to get there. We also got our notes from the Week 1 game. I was able to go back and grind a lot of all 22 film. So I'll share my thoughts on that. And then we're going to preview the Steelers' upcoming game against the Seattle Seahawks and talk about whether Aaron Rodgers can repeat that performance or if that's just a one-off for him. But Shayne, let's start with the news this week. And obviously we have the win over the Jets. We're going to get there and do a more detailed breakdown of this. But what were your initial thoughts from this? Did you think the Steelers were going to pull this out in the end?
There was definitely a moment, especially like in the third quarter, where I was like, this game might get out of hand in the opposite way. Like it kind of felt like the Jets could do whatever they wanted on offense, especially in the ground game. We'll talk a lot about that issue for sure. But it just kind of felt like the Steelers were playing behind the eight ball a lot of the time, for especially that after the second half, really. And that, honestly, we'll talk about this probably more too. Like the special teams came through with the fumble. Kenneth Gainwell knocks the ball out of Gibson's hands, who now is not on the team. As Aaron Glenn did say, mistakes like that will not be tolerated. I guess he wasn't joking. He's not on the team anymore. So we'll see, what happens with that. But you get the fumble, the quick touchdown right after that. And from there, the momentum definitely swung in the Steelers' favor, and they were able to pull it out thanks to someone we'll talk about here in a second, who's the player of the week on special teams for a reason.
Yeah, Shayne, in story of Mike Tomlin's career, at least like the last decade, you rely on a special teams or defensive takeaway to keep you in that game, to make sure that you got a chance to win. Because without those two things happening, it would have been looking grim for the Steelers there. Let's talk about some of the injuries that occurred during this game. The big one was Deshaun Elliott, and that looked scary when upon replay, you could see his leg got twisted up in the pile there. It goes down really awkwardly, and it's like, oh man, I hope he didn't just tear his meniscus or ACL or something that way.
Like that, yeah.
Turns out we've had our second MCL sprain scare, same exact injury that Derek Harmon suffered in the preseason finale against the Panthers. So fortunately, it sounds like Elliott's only going to miss a few weeks. Could have been much worse than this. We'll talk about the corresponding move here in a second. The other moves, the other injuries, that occurred during this game was Malik Harrison suffered a knee injury. Did Tomlin offer an update on the severity of his?
I don't think so, but he is going to IR. So I'm assuming it's at least like it's going to be at least a few, I would say obviously 4+ weeks before we see him again. It might be season ending. I haven't seen it
to be longer. Yeah, you only get so many of those IR designated to return spots, whether or not they use one on him. Obviously, they'll want to. The money invested in him this offseason, be that thumping linebacker, special teams player. We'll see if he can get back on the field. And then a surprise one, Shayne, Skylar Thompson goes to IR. Didn't even play or dress for this game even. But this injury must have occurred during practice, I would assume, a hamstring injury for Thompson. So now, all of a sudden, I mean, this team is razor thin at quarterback outside of Rodgers and Mason Rudolph. Obviously, you hope that it never comes to a situation where you need to call on your third guy. But right at the cut down deadline, Shayne, we're talking about, are the Steelers going to keep Will Howard on the roster? Are they going to keep Skylar Thompson? Right now, they have neither, and they might not have either again until October.
That's the issue. Is now it's like, all right, are they going to go add a third quarterback to have for an emergency situation? Because Howard obviously can't come back until I think it's week 5, right? Because he was put on IR to start the season. So hopefully maybe he can be the answer to that if Thompson isn't able to be the answer to that at some point soon as well. But until then, you're right. Like, I'm not really sure what the plan would be if they don't add a third quarterback. So maybe we hear news about that sooner rather than later.
And in that corresponding move, the Steelers signed Logan Woodside to their practice squad. So if all heck breaks loose, Shayne, and the Steelers lose their top 2 quarterbacks, we're looking at maybe Logan Woodside. I think that they would make another move before
probably
point, unless both injuries occurred in the same game.
Right, and then you have to.
I don't think this is something that we need to spend a lot of time fearing. We'll get another quarterback here soon in several weeks, you would assume. Of course, that depends on how healthy Will Howard's hand is. Is he going to be up to speed? We'll find out. But yeah, kind of a off the radar, didn't really see coming move there for the Steelers, placing Skylar Thompson on IR. And I would assume that his season is not done. It's only a hamstring. He'll probably be back up at some point, or they'll make that decision. Do you bring back Skylar Thompson if Will Howard is ready to go simultaneously? You're only probably going to bring one of those guys back. Which one are you going to do? We will see. Shayne, because of the DeShon Elliott injury, maybe just because they wanted the depth, the Steelers went out and signed Jabril Peppers, former first-round safety in the 2017 NFL draft. A guy who's been up and down over his career, usually has played well when he's been surrounded by a good defense. Downhill thumping, tone-setting type box safety. I'm kind of remotely excited about this move. I mean, if you would have asked me, like back in 2019, the Steelers were getting Juan Thornhill and Jabril Peppers, I would have been stoked about it. Different types of players at this stage of their career. Thornhill's 30, Peppers is 29. Like, you're not getting the same version of these players at this point that maybe they once were. But what do you think that Peppers can offer this team? And I think that he's going to be thrust into a role, a pretty big role in that Steelers defense because of DeShon Elliott's injury.
I think they're hoping he brings the run defense aspect of Elliott's game. You know, that's the biggest thing that they're losing, because it's not that Elliott isn't a good coverage player. He is, but he's not, one of those ball hawks, like true free safety types, right? They're not asking Peppers to replace that because they don't really have that right now, you could argue, in general. But they are hoping he can be a force in the run game, can have some big hits, some big plays. He has been known to create some splash plays with forced fumbles and just dislodging the ball, as Jalen Ramsey showed he can also do at the end of the Jets game. So that's kind of what I think they're hoping to get out of him early on. And then you hope that Elliott can come back sooner rather than later, and then Peppers can fall into more of that like third or fourth safety role, right? So for now, though, I am expecting him to probably play a lot of downs, especially early downs in this defense.
Yeah, and I mean, for what it's worth, he did grade out well last year. It was only in 6 games with the Patriots. He has been banged up at times throughout his career. It's kind of been bounced around the league. 3 years with the Giants, 3 years with the Patriots. We'll see what version the Steelers are getting out of him. Obviously started his career with Cleveland. But yeah, I mean, well, that's someone else that we can kind of look forward to. Maybe he can give them a boost in that run defense. We know that they need it. We're going to talk about the trenches here in just a little bit. And then Shayne, the other note of news that just came out, Chris Boswell wins the AFC Special Teams Player of the Week for very obvious reasons. I mean, anytime you kick a 60-yard game-winning field goal, you deserve to be put in that conversation. And for my money, best kicker in the NFL last year is off to a great start this year too.
Yeah, I mean, I said this on another show that I do with some people, that I won't argue with it. Like, I will not even just argue with anyone about who the best kicker is right now. I understand Aubrey in Dallas is very good. I have nothing against him. You can't tell me Chris Boswell is not the best kicker in the NFL. I just, maybe I'm biased about that, but I think that that's just what it is. So he definitely earned it. He got us the win in a lot of ways, especially obviously the game winner. And I'm sure Rodgers is very happy to have a kicker who he could probably rely on when he hasn't had that in a while, and especially not last year.
Not at all. Much deserved from Boswell. I would not expect this to be his lone AFC Player of the Week award this year. All right, Shayne, let's talk about Steelers, Jets, biggest notes and takeaways from week one. We're going to start on the offensive side of the ball. We're going to run down through the positions, and let's start right at the top. Biggest name on the list, Aaron Rodgers, coming off a 4-touchdown performance, 22 of 30, 244 yards, 8.1 yards an attempt. Did not have an interception, was sacked 4 times. But he was able to turn his debut with the Steelers into a 136.7 passer rating. It wasn't maybe as good as the numbers would indicate. I think one of those touchdowns, you could count it as fraudulent if you want to. It was the push pass, the little shovel pass there. We've seen that before, and we've seen it from Patrick Mahomes before. So it still counts as a reception, even though it's more like a run. If you want to count it 3 touchdowns, 0 picks, that's fine. What I think people are up in arms about is, bizarrely, Aaron Rodgers had a really poor PFF grade in this game. Graded out actually almost identically. Actually, it was identical to Broderick Jones, 54.5 overall PFF grade. Now, I'm not going to get too bent out of shape about this. I thought that his debut performance was good from Rodgers. I didn't think that it was elite. I don't think that it was good as the numbers indicated. But when he was protected, he threw the ball well. Had a few misses. He airmailed one over the middle that should have been an easy completion. I think there were also 2 interceptable passes in this game. So there's definitely some things to clean up. But overall, I mean, fans have to be pleased with what they got out of Rodgers, especially considering he didn't have a lot of time to throw the football.
I think that's the key thing. And I have heard people get all worked up about the PFF grade. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I think everything that they do is remotely accurate, because it's very hard to be accurate in this space, especially if you're trying to boil down performances into numbers like they do. But I do think that, again, he didn't play as well as someone who put his stat lineup would suggest, right? There was some shaky moments. He still does have some issues, especially when it comes to staying in the pocket and trying to throw under duress at his age. That's going to be part of his game. However, I'm more excited about the fact that the offense was able to function despite all the limitations that the defense put on them, where they had to kind of score to keep up in this game. The way the offensive line played and the running game didn't really show up at all, and they were still able to find ways to be successful in the passing game. That's really encouraging as the season moves along, because if they can clean those things up, if the run game comes alive, if the pass blocking improves, now it's okay, if we can do more stuff on top of what we just did that got us 34 points, we might really be in business. So you can take the performance however you want, but I think it's indicative of how the offense could perform this year, that they still put up 34 points without a truly elite performance from Rodgers.
Yeah, Shane, and if I would have said before the game, the Steelers will not be able to run the football and they will not be able to stop the run, and Justin Fields is going to have an awesome game, you would say that's a loss, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's easy
but
loss.
It wasn't. And I think that's what's most encouraging, is that even when the trenches weren't where they needed to be, we're going to talk about that, and things were not going your way, you were still able to have a competent enough offense. And I mean, really one of the best passing performances we've seen in a few years from a Steelers quarterback.
Yes.
Very low bar.
Yeah.
But it's encouraging nonetheless, because we didn't know which version of Rodgers we would be getting. We still don't know. I mean, it's just a 1-game sample, but I think there's a lot to be encouraged by. Obviously, there's a lot of yak yards there. DK Metcalf made some incredible plays after the catch. We'll talk about him. But some really nice downfield passes. The pass to Calvin Austin on the slot fade. It looked pretty when he was protected. And I think that's the key, is when he's protected. Can you sustain this type of offense and this type of scoring output if you don't have time to throw, and if everything is a 3-stop drop and out? I don't believe that you can at all. So that needs to improve. But a lot of that is just not on Rodgers. It's simply not. He's got to get the protection there, and then maybe he'll have a little bit more confidence to sit back. Shane, let's talk about the running game and the running back committee here. Kind of an odd approach, and we'll talk about some snap distribution later. But Jaylen Warren in this one, 11 carries, 37 yards. It's 3.4 yards a carry. Kenneth Gainwell, clear second in line, which was a little bit surprising to me. I thought I'm not shocked by it, but grossly outsnapped Caleb Johnson, who saw just 1 touch on offense in this game, and that came on a 2-yard loss and a pitch play to the left. Kenneth Gainwell was wildly inefficient too, 7 carries for 19 yards. And then in the passing game does next to nothing, 4 targets with as many yards, 4 targets, 4 yards. I mean, you can't get lower level production than what you got out of Gainwell. To his credit, made the huge special teams forced fumble. So that made it all worth it right there. But offensively, you got nothing out of this guy. We need to be talking about, all right, one and done. I'm turn the page for me. I want to see Caleb Johnson out there. Gainwell, I saw what you had as a runner the first 4 years in Philadelphia. I wasn't impressed. I think that you are best in that 3rd down role. The receiver out of the backfield can push you out to the slot. That's where you are best. I'm good. I'm good. I think with Caleb Johnson as a run, or excuse me, with Gainwell as a runner, I want to see more Caleb Johnson.
I do too, but I don't anticipate that will be happening anytime soon. I think that this was a clear indication that they do not trust Caleb Johnson right now for any number of reasons. It may be his inability to pass protect. It may be just the lack of third down ability right now. It might just be that they don't think he's ready to be one of the primary runners on this team. But I wouldn't be surprised if this week coming up, and we'll talk about it, that you see a similar distribution of snaps in the running back room. And it is frustrating because right now Jaylen Warren, like, he did struggle a little bit in this game, but I think it was more to do with the blocking, which we'll be talking about here in a little bit. But he's the only one I think they trust to really hand the ball significantly. They did get Gainwell some chances, but I think that was just because of circumstances and probably because Rodgers, changed to run a couple times while he happened to be the running back in the backfield. But it does seem like Gainwell, if anything, he might be closer to a starter than he is a second string, because if you look at the snaps and how they kind of used him, it's closer to that. So I don't expect that we'll be seeing that change anytime soon.
Yeah, definitely not impressed. And again, overall, take it for what you will, because the offensive line plays such a major role in how effective your running game is. I mean, we saw that with Saquon Barkley during his time in New York, and then when he goes to Philadelphia, you get better blocking. You can really see that talent come alive. There wasn't a lot of room to work with. You go back and watch the All-22, which we're going to get to the offensive line here, but the holes were minimal. They kind of had to abandon the run in a way. 20 carries as a team for 53 yards. That's 2.7 yards an attempt. You are not going to win many football games, especially under your Arthur Smith philosophy, where you need to control the clock. You need to be a good running team. They were able to escape with a win, which they were very fortunate to do that in this game. But the running success obviously needs to go up. Overall, kind of lackadaisical performance from the running back room that can be attributed largely to the offensive line. Shayne, let's talk about the wide receivers here for a minute. DK Metcalf in his Steelers debut. What did you make of him? He had started things off kind of rough with that drop on the crosser there. Pretty easy catch, but he made up for it. I mean, he's got some juice after the catch. He can turn those jets on for a big wide receiver, run past some defensive backs, get to the sideline, take it for some extra yards. Ended up with 4 catches, 83 yards, 7 yards per target, averaged over 20 yards of reception in this game. What'd you make of his debut?
Yeah, gadget receiver DK Metcalf. It's funny. They pretty much kind of used him as like a design touch guy a lot of the time. Like they got it out to him in space. It allowed him to make plays, and to his credit, he did that. And that's not something he can't do, as evidence in this game. But I am curious, obviously the pass protection was an issue, and maybe that'll get better and then you can do this more. But I do wonder if we're going to get the verticality from him as much this year as we've seen in past years in Seattle with him, just because of the nature of the offense, right? But if that comes along and he can do the stuff he did in this game, where he is catching the ball and turning upfield and running away from people, then he could end up outproducing what I thought he could do. But I do want to see more real receiver stuff from him. Not that he can't do it, obviously he can, but this offense just kind of wasn't in a position to do it this week.
Yeah, and it was an interesting usage of DK. We kind of saw maybe this is a glimpse of things to come. I would have almost guessed it would have been the other way around. You try to hit Calvin Austin on a crosser, and with his 4.2 whatever speed, try to outrun defensive backs, see some DK down the field. We saw the opposite, where it was Austin who was targeted down the field as the 5'7 3/4" wide receiver. He plays bigger than his size, to his credit. So that's another name on the list. So talk about Calvin for a second. I thought he had a really good game in week 1 against the Jets, where he made the contested catch on the sideline. He had the touchdown catch. Obviously, there was one late in the game, Shayne, that maybe could have been a pass interference that he could have drawn. Got a 2-hand shove there as he was going up, kind of one-handed to make the catch. It'll be interesting to see if they continue to try to use him in that facet, because he's just not big. I mean, he's going to be smaller than virtually every defensive back he lines up against this year. So that's not going to be his calling card there. But can he still win down the field? Sure, he could do it with speed. And I think that he is a very natural receiver. Obviously liked him a lot coming out of Memphis. But 4 catches, 70 yards, and a touchdown in this game on 6 targets. Good overall efficiency. And I thought it was a good game for him.
It was. And I think if he can continue to win in the way that he did, which really his speed is what threatens corners so much. Like, we talk about how a guy like him can't really play on the outside. It's like, he can. It's just you have to line him up in a way and allow him to have a free release, because obviously against press, he's probably not going to get off a lot of press. It's just not really his game. It can't really be his game at his size. But if he can win off the line and get deep on people, he is able to burn guys. We've seen that. Stevens, especially the corner for the Jets, we know him well. Ravens fans, unfortunately, know him well as well. They're probably happy to see him go. He just didn't really have an answer for the explosiveness from him, and that's why you get the pass interference and almost had another one and just all that stuff. I do think against certain matchups he can play this way, but I do hope they're able to get him involved more in the kind of gadgety type of stuff as well.
Yeah, Shayne, outside of those two guys, not a lot of other things to note. Ben Skoronek's lone target was a 22-yard touchdown, which was nice to see.
Yeah, Jonnu
Smith, 6 targets for 15 yards. One of those was that little push pass touchdown. So it was nice to see him score off of that, but not efficient overall. They tried to engineer some screen passes. Didn't really work because the blocking wasn't working in this game. Also, probably the biggest disappointment overall from the receivers was did not see Roman Wilson get involved. He only played 10 snaps in this game. 7 of those were snaps on passing downs. I cut up his film, his all 22 film on my X account. And I thought that, I mean, he did a decent job overall. Just the ball didn't come his way. And maybe the biggest takeaway from what the Jets were doing defensively, Shayne, they played a lot of cover one and they dared the Steelers to throw the ball deep down the field. They brought pressure and they trusted their defensive backs, knowing that Aaron Rodgers wouldn't be able to hang on to the ball long enough for those plays to open up down the field. And I think maybe if there was another second in some of those plays in pass protection, you could have hit Roman Wilson down the field, deep down the field on a few of those plays when they were playing cover one, when he didn't have a safety over the top of him. The problem was they just couldn't hold up on the offensive line. So let's talk about the O-line next, Shayne. And the elephant on the room in the room on the offensive line is obviously it's Broderick Jones. I mean, you talk about needing a performance. You're in year 3 now. I know that you're playing left tackle again, what you did in college. You didn't do it the past 2 years for Pittsburgh, but you needed to come out and show that you are the player that was worth trading up to the 14th overall pick in the 2023 draft. Did not show that even a little bit. In fact, his first play gave up a sack, gave up 3 sacks, 4 pressures in this game. It was a rough performance. And I cut up his tape on the all 22 as well. The problem with an offensive lineman is even if 90% of your snaps look respectable, those 3 or 4 snaps, if they are ugly, they can get your quarterback killed, and they make it so you don't have a bad game. And it was not a good game from Broderick. Actually, really surprised he didn't grade out much more poorly than he did at 54.5 grade. I thought it would have been down in the 30s. It was just not a good performance overall from him.
Yeah, and it's just really disappointing because you started to see him seemingly get a little bit comfortable in the preseason, right? Like he was starting to get back in the groove of things at left tackle, and after a really rough training camp for the most part, all that stuff. And then he comes out, and again, the Jets front is very good. Like he gets beat on a stunt from Quinnen Williams at one point in the game. I think that's tough. You're going to lose those matchups sometimes. And Will McDonald is a very explosive pass rusher. Had double-digit sacks last year. But you can't look this bad against really anyone. That's the ultimate problem is and you talked about it with Broderick. It's not that he is like unplayable constantly. It's that he's mostly not very noticeable or fine throughout most of the game. But then there's 3 or 4 key plays where he gets beat in a way that you simply can't get beat in the NFL and expect to start. And it's consistent with him, right? So until that stops happening, and it can't be more than once a game. Like you get beat real bad once a game, whatever. Most guys who aren't the all pros do. It's you gave up 3 sacks in this game. Like you just can't do that. Like Dan Moore had the most sacks allowed according to, I think it was PFF that was tracking this last year, 12. He's already a quarter of the way there in one game. Like you can't do that.
Yeah, it was rough. I mean, you're getting beat at way too high of a clip here. That's not going to fly. The problem is you don't have anybody else you can turn to. Broderick has to get it. And you go back and watch him. It's like, what is the reason for this? I think it's several things. The mechanics still seem sloppy. The footwork seems a little bit lazy at times. He's not finishing his block strong, or he'll be engaged for a few seconds, and all of a sudden, inexplicably, just kind of lets the guy disengage from him. Seems like they just kind of quits at the end of the play. Like finish the rep all the way through until you hear the whistle. he should theoretically, I mean, there should be so much more to work with here in terms of talent. He's got the prototype size, at least he had coming out of Georgia. You should have no issue with his athletic traits. I mean, we saw those on display during the pre-draft process. He obviously tested very well at the combine. Like, he shouldn't be limited in these ways. And yet somehow his film, he does seem limited. And I'm not sure how to even put my finger on it, but it's got to improve. And you blame Broderick, obviously. You can also blame Tomlin for, maybe not put him in the best position, but then you blame Pat Meyer too. It's like, why is this guy, you're 3 years into his NFL career now, why has he not gotten any better than what he was from day one? Like, you have to have somebody's got to be accountable for this. Like, maybe he's just a bad player and he just doesn't get it. But very frustrating performance from him. Let's talk about Fautano, other side of the offensive line. I thought that his performance was okay. Had a few rough reps in there where I was surprised he actually got beat around the edge. You normally, he's quick-footed. That's not how he typically loses. Tough matchup too against Jermaine Johnson. And so I'm not worried about Fautano. I think he's going to be good overall, but just this unit, Shayne, the unit did not perform nearly as well as I had hoped in this game.
No, I think the interior pass protection was fine, especially Frazier and Seahawks. I think they were good. But the run blocking too, we haven't even really talked about that. Like, they just simply weren't getting it done in really any facet. Like, no one really had a good day in that part of the game. And that's part of the problem with Arthur Smith's offense, is that if normally, especially in the past, now granted the quarterback play has been so bad that it kind of has to work this way, but if you can't run the football, usually nothing else works. Now they were able to get some explosives and stuff from Rodgers that offset this. But moving forward, like, if this is how they're going to run block against admittedly a Jets defense that was really poor against run last year, but seems to be figuring it out a little bit more this year. We'll see if that holds. This offense could crater quickly if they don't get that going. Like, it just, especially with the way the NFL is going now, like so much of the 2 tight end stuff, like they love to do, obviously, maybe even 3 tight end stuff, we'll see. It just, you can't be bad running the football in 2025. I just don't think it works anymore.
Yeah, Shayne, and they have so much invested into their offensive line at this point. Your bookend tackles are both first-round picks. Zach Frazier was a second-round pick. Mason McCormick, a fourth-round pick. Isaac Seumalo, a big free agent signing. Like, you've got to figure this out. And let me just ask you, do you think that what we saw in week 1 was kind of just that fluky wake-up call, weird things happen in week 1? Or are you legitimately concerned about what you're seeing here?
I definitely think I'm a little bit concerned in terms of just like their ability to run this offense the way that Smith wants to run it, where if Jones is going to be this guy that just is never consistent, and Fautanu is a good run blocker, but is probably going to be more of a pass protecting tackle in the NFL, it really comes down to like how great that interior is. And I think that they have a lot of ceiling, especially with Frazier and McCormick. Seumalo just kind of is what he is at this point. Not that he's a bad player, but he isn't the best scheme fit in the world for Arthur Smith's run game. I wonder if this is just at best going to be like a middle of the pack running team, and that might be enough if Rodgers can play like he did in week 1 most of the season. But if he can't, we could start to see this offense slow down as the season wears along.
All right, Shayne, let's move over to the defensive side of the ball.
Oh boy.
And this was ugly. So, I mean, my score prediction, I think, for this game was 2017 Steelers. Didn't at all go that
mine was
way.
even worse, 2014. I had
well, I mean, you think about, all right, we know Justin Fields pretty well. We obviously saw him in the first 6 games on the Steelers last year. I'm like, Fields can beat them on the ground, there's no doubt, but I didn't think that he would like dice them up through the air either. And Fields was good in this game. And so let's start with the interior defensive line here, Shayne. This performance was about as bad as we could have possibly anticipated. Like, I knew that we've seen the read option, we've seen the RPO give the Steelers trouble in the past. I think of like Shane Steichen offenses when he was with the Eagles and even with the Colts, how that's killed the Steelers. But I didn't think it was going to be as ugly as it was. And then maybe the most overall ugly performance, unfortunately, was our guy Keanu Benton. We'll talk about him more in a little bit, but he was getting pushed around in this game. Y.A. Black was asked to play a lot. He played 24 snaps in this game because Derek Harmon obviously wasn't playing. I thought his performance was up and down, missed several tackles. kind of got himself out of position a little bit. Then Cam Hayward, your guy, the guy that you rely on in this run defense, he looked like a 36-year-old that didn't practice all summer, really.
Yeah, I mean, here's all I'm going to say with the interior, right? It simply can't be this bad again, or this defense isn't going to be what it's been. It just isn't. Mm-hmm. Like, they can't look like this against really anyone else, I think, because the Jets, I think, are going to be a really good running team. They have the running back talent. The offensive line played well, and Justin Fields is a big factor in it. There's plenty of other teams that can run the ball traditionally that are also going to be able to take advantage of the type of holes that the Jets got in this game. Like, they basically said, hey, let's not run at TJ Watt for the most part, and we're going to be just fine. And unfortunately, they were right about that. Like, that's just what it comes down to. And if Cam is going to take a step back this year, finally, like actually take a step back, not just be injured, but actually take a step back, man, was it a rough time to ask for more money. Like, that's going to look real bad. As much as I don't have a problem with it in general, that's not going to look great if he plays like this the rest of the year. It's not that he was like completely terrible, but it just wasn't Cam Hayward. And unfortunately, they kind of need him to be Cam Hayward unless Harmon can come back and also be a force, which I'm hopeful for, but he's a rookie, right? Like, can you really ask him to be the difference between not having full strength Cam Hayward? I just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, collectively as a unit, they just weren't good. And the problem is, like, man, you go back and watch the all 22 of just all those guys, and it was so blah. Like, this is probably the closest that you'll ever see, like, Hayward and like Loudermilk looking like there's almost no difference. Like, Hayward did have a couple nice reps late in the game. I'll give him credit where credit is due. But just collectively, these guys were getting bulldozed, pushed over, knocked into each other. I cut up one play where Benton was pushed just completely laterally into Y.A. Black's legs and just knocked him over, prevented him from having any chance of making the play. It was bad stuff on the interior defensive line. I did not see them getting moved around like that prior to the game. And we talk about a Jets offense that was missing Elijah Vera Tucker, their most consistent piece on the offensive line when he's healthy. They had to scramble their line around, put Josh Myers at center, put Joe Tippmann at right guard. I'm like, this advantage Steelers? Apparently not. Like, it was not an advantage for Steelers at all in this game. So I'm really hoping, Shayne, this is just more of a fluke and kind of a wake-up call. Like, hey, we're not going to get caught off guard like that again. Obviously, you hope that Derek Harmon can come back very soon. I think, honestly, just from the makeup of his game, he probably helps them more as a pass rusher than a run defender. But they need the bodies they can get right now. They need fresh people out there. They need just the overall performance to improve collectively along the interior defensive line. Shayne, let's talk about the edge rushers here. TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and essentially nobody else. Like, these guys were called upon for like 99% of the game. Watt played 55 snaps out wide, out past tackle, and Highsmith played 56 out there. So these guys were always on the field. And it's kind of the tale of two stories here between Watt and Highsmith. I thought that Watt did a really good job containing his edge. They rarely ran the football his side. And maybe some people will say, well, that's because Watt's older and couldn't chase the backside pursuit fast enough to get. I mean, look, you got to slow Breece Hall down a little. You can't let him go with a full head of steam and holes where you can drive a truck through either. Highsmith is getting washed out as a run defender. The roles were reversed as a pass rusher, though. I thought that Armand Membu, the rookie tackle in his first ever NFL game, did a fantastic job swallowing up Watt for the most part as a pass rusher, whereas Highsmith had 8 pressures in this game. I have no complaints about his pass rush at all. Where I didn't like Highsmith's game was he was just there were times where he'd go completely out of frame in the all 22 because he was getting pushed out so far. And the vast majority of the rushing success from the Jets' backfield came through that A gap over there, or that B gap over there, on Highsmith's side, where it's like, all right, you gotta do a better job containing at the point of attack.
Yeah. To be honest with you, I think and I don't want to say that this is already the case, because like we need to see him throughout the season. And I did have Membu as my top tackle in this draft, so I don't want to discredit him. I do wonder if we're at the point where the best pass rusher on this team is Alex Highsmith. Like, I'm not going to be surprised this year if he's the most productive pass rusher by a decent amount. Like, I just don't know if TJ's kind of go-to stuff is going to work at the same level that it has in the past at this point in his career. And that's not to say that he can't, figure something else out or add some stuff to his game or whatever it is, right? Oh, or maybe, I don't know, do something else with him besides the same thing that they've done for a decade almost. I don't know. That might help, but that's neither here nor there. I just wonder at this point if that's the case. And I think that could be okay because I think Highsmith is a fantastic pass rusher, but I need him to be at least close to what Highsmith is as a pass rusher this year, because then you have a dynamic duo anyway, regardless. Plus, when you get Herbig back, you can throw him out there. But I am wondering, just from this first game, and again, we'll monitor it moving forward, but I wouldn't be shocked if that ends up happening.
And I don't think it was a bad game by Watt for
not
any stretch of the imagination. I still think that he did a solid job. And obviously, if there's a third edge that you can rotate in there, I think Sawyer only saw a couple of snaps. If Herbig had been playing this game, you can rest the guys a little bit more. Maybe you get more efficiency. But this didn't look like a player that you're paying $40 million a year to. And so that's where it's got to improve. You had a matchup against a rookie offensive tackle in his first ever game, and you let him come away with a 89 PFF grade and not really allow any pressure in this game. And so you would have hoped the results would have been better for that. Like I said, I thought Watt was good as a run defender. Highsmith was good as a pass rusher, but they were inverts of each other in this game. You need them to be good at both of those things if your defense is going to be one of the top 5 units in the league this year. That was the hope. It certainly doesn't look that way early on, but again, week 1 is fluky. Shayne, linebackers, bad game from them. I was very disappointed in both Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson. Wilson surprised me more so because I was so bullish on him. I'm not worried about Peyton Wilson at all yet. It's just one of those games when it rains, it pours, and you're getting your own defensive line pushed into you. There's not a lot you can do about that. And so if the guys up front are doing their jobs, I think it's going to make the linebacker jobs a lot easier.
Yeah, and I think to his credit, I don't think Patrick Queen was too bad in run defense, but the coverage still isn't there. And Peyton Wilson also not good in coverage in this game, right? Like, the coverage has to be better. When you have 2 athletes like this out at linebacker, you can't allow them to just run free in the middle of the field and throw the ball. Like, you can't do it. So they both need to get better, especially in coverage. I think Queen had a better day in run defense, but that's not that surprising with him. I do expect a lot more out of both these guys, though, regardless of kind of how you feel about either of them. I think they both need to play better than they did in this game.
All right, Shayne. And then in the secondary, Joey Porter Jr. left the game early with an injury. But prior to that point, he had 44 snaps, a 32.4 PFF grade in this game. He was picked on a few times. The rest of the secondary I thought was kind of blah. But obviously the biggest note here, Jalen Ramsey for the win. Like, his last 2 plays were so clutch in here. It's like, oh, that's the all-pro player, the former 3-time all-pro and whatever time Pro Bowler that you traded for. He looks like the Jalen Ramsey of old, at least in the first game, and had a huge part to do with sealing that victory in that final drive.
Yeah, this was a good day for those who were hoping Jalen Ramsey is going to be a difference for this defense, because he absolutely was. Now, the rest of them have to also play well. So it needs to be an addition and not him holding the whole thing up like Minka's had to do in the past when he was here. But it is promising that he looked the part early on in the season when we weren't really 100% sure what his role is going to be ultimately. And it looks like the one he's in is just fine.
Yeah, I mean, there was nobody more fired up than Jalen Ramsey on this Steelers team in week 1. Like, it was what I wanted to see. And honestly, I think they need that intensity. And so I hope he keeps bringing it. Shayne, if I would have told you, though, like entering week 2 of the 2025 season, if I said this early last offseason, your safeties would go from Minkah Fitzpatrick and Deshaun Elliott to Juan Thornhill and now Jabril Peppers, at least for these next few days. Like, I don't think anybody would have believed that would have been the case. So potential problems in the deep end of the Steelers defense. Let's hope it doesn't get that way.
Yeah.
All right. And then let's talk about special teams really briefly here. Actually, I want to touch on Justin Fields' performance real quick here. You allowed Fields to go off for 16 of 22, 218 yards, 10 yards an attempt, 9.9. one touchdown through the air, another one where he fooled the defense and tucked and ran in the end zone, a 79.4 QBR, 119 passer rating. Like, this was one of the best games of his career, quite frankly. Shayne, it's so early on, and we've seen probably more than enough of Fields at this point. He's in his 5th year. He's 26 years old now. But we talked so many times last year about how the Steelers needed to just play out the season with Fields, who was 25 at the time, lots of traits to work with, and see what you had in him. Are the Steelers going to regret this decision to let him walk and sign with the Jets?
This is one of the tougher conversations, I think, for a lot of fans of the Steelers right now, because part of me wants to say, yes, they should not have allowed him to leave. And more specifically, he should have just played all of last year, right? In hindsight, that makes sense because we saw what happened down the stretch of the season. Russ started off hot, including a game against the same Jets team last year, and then completely fizzled out by the end of the season, right? But the other part of me is saying, I don't know if it would have worked out the same way it's currently working out with the Jets, because this game, I know you said it's one of his best games. I think it's by far his best game as a professional in terms of actually playing the quarterback position, right?
Yeah.
He's had games where he rushes for like 150 yards and 2 touchdowns because he's a maniac, and he had to back with the Bears. But in terms of like actually playing the quarterback position from start to finish, easily his best professional game. And I think that fact, coming in week 1 against the defense that he does know well, with a new offensive coordinator from the Lions who does know how to, especially, we'll see about Ben Johnson. That was a tough first game, but they know how to build offenses over there. I do wonder if we would have had the same results, right? Like maybe he doesn't develop the way that he seems to have. Maybe he doesn't have the quarterback ability that he showed in this game. But it is going to be a question, like once Rodgers is done here, and especially if he does fizzle out by the end of the year, if they can't find a suitable solution sooner rather than later, and Fields continues to play this way, everyone is going to be begging the question.
Yeah, Shayne, I feel like we probably know who he is at this stage of his career. Quarterbacks don't change that much when you're in year 5 now, but he looked sharp as a passer. I mean, he was fitting some tight window throws there. The rushing ability has always been there. I think the rushing ability is fantastic. And so you can always keep the defense on their toes because of the threat of that, to pull it out and run with it like he showed in week 1. So I really hope this isn't one of those situations where they live with regret here and he ends up being good for them. My guess with Fields, honestly, though, is he ends up being the stopgap quarterback this year for the Jets. Maybe one more season next year, stopgap, as they try to bridge and find a new quarterback for the future. And that's probably the route that he would have taken had he stayed and signed with the Steelers. And again, who can blame him? Tomlin benched him going into week 7 last year. He wanted a fresh start with a head coach in Aaron Glenn who believed in him. But that is what it is. Steelers emerge victorious, albeit in a shootout win over the Jets that I don't think that many anticipated. I did cut up a lot of the film on my X account. You can go over and check it out over there if you want to actually put some eyes on some of the stuff that we've been talking about on the show so far. If you are a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers and would like to support the Steel Curtain podcast, please consider subscribing to the Steel Curtain podcast on YouTube. We appreciate your support. Hit that like button, leave us a comment down below. And if you guys are joining us here in the live chat, I see that we have quite a few. Drop your comments, drop some questions for us. We want to get to those. Let's get this conversation rolling here. And as you do that, Shayne, I want to talk about how the Steelers continue to misuse talent. Do you have something?
Do you want to cover special teams real quick since we talked about
special teams? I always breeze over special teams. Yes.
Not this game. We can't.
No, special teams was pivotal in this game. And so, let's backtrack 1 second here and talk about the play that Kenneth Gainwell made late in the game. Without this play, Shayne, it's doubtful that Steelers come away with this win. Jets were not controlling the clock.
They weren't going to win. Yeah.
So Gainwell goes and forces the fumble. Heads up play by Skoranek to jump on it led to a touchdown for the Steelers. And then obviously, like we talked about earlier in the show, Chris Boswell eventually knocked in that 60-yard field goal for the win. And I remember thinking on that series, Shayne, I'm like, just get a few yards. You don't need to go like deep down the field to Calvin. Like just get a few yards because Boswell is so automatic. Make this like a 58-yarder. Like 60 is pushing it. But I mean, he is the Wizard of Oz for a reason.
Yeah, wasn't even close too. It was always going to go in second he kicked it.
Just
I was
so
like,
wild.
okay.
I mean, it's wild that you look at the preseason game where we saw a 70-yard kick from a 6-foot, 172-pound kicker. I'm like, what in the world is happening? Guys
Kickers
can kick the ball further than ever before. It's crazy.
Kickers are going crazy, which it's always fun. But no, like him hitting a career long 60, it feels like it shouldn't be a career long for a guy like that, but they haven't tried many of the 60 range. But him hitting that kick, as soon as I saw it was 60, I'm like, part of me was like, man, are they really going to ask him to do this in the first game with all the things that are going on? And then he just doesn't even really matter at all. He just hits him like, all right, well, what am I talking about? And then of course, the special teams play by Gainwell. This team, even in a game where they score 34 points and the offense is kind of the story of the day, it still ends up being a special teams turnover or something weird like that gets them the win. It's always like that with this team. And like part of me loves it because it's fun, but the other part of me is like, can you just win like a normal team like one time? Like, that'd be really cool. If I could, like, if it's like the middle of the fourth quarter, I'm like, the game's over, guys. I don't have to worry about this anymore. Then again, if you're playing certain teams, like I'm talking about you Ravens, maybe you shouldn't act that way and you should just, end the game as soon as possible. But in general, it was very fun to see this team win the same way, but different, I guess. Right. So,
yeah. The only other thing to note here for special teams, Caleb Johnson had 5 kick returns for 132 yards. It's 26.4 yards a return. Little scare there when he coughed the ball up, is recovered by Thornhill, I think. And then Kenneth Gainwell took his lone return for 33 yards. Looks like those are going to be the guys back there toting the rock on the return team. And so hopefully we can see some more consistent results in that regard. Both Gainwell and Caleb Johnson had a fumble in this game, so not what you want to see from 2 of your 3 running backs. So we'll see moving forward. And Shayne, no punt returns for the Steelers, which was kind of told you how the game went for Pittsburgh, where they're letting him just chew up too many yards to even have that opportunity to return a punt. So no opportunities for Calvin Austin there this game. But overall, 2 pivotal plays for the special teams: the forced fumble recovery, and then the Boswell kick. All right, let's move on now, Shayne, and let's talk about the misuse of talent on the Steelers roster. Nothing frustrates us more than this. We've talked about it so many times on this show over the past several years. And I want to talk specifically about Keanu Benton first, because this was so egregious. When I put back the film on and I'm like, what are you doing to this guy? Shayne, we said in 2023, when the Steelers drafted Keanu Benton, where would he be best? You are a huge Wisconsin fan. You watched him a ton. What are his best traits? He's roughly 6'4", 309, 34-inch arms. When I scouted him, I can go back to like 2022, 23. You scout Keanu Benton and you see a guy that has impressive hip flexibility, pretty good bend, good quickness. He is best at knifing in and getting pressure on the quarterback. Where is his biggest weakness? It's 2-gapping and holding up at the point of attack and trying to take on double team blocks. What are the Steelers asking him to do? They're wanting him to be the nose tackle, a 3-4 nose tackle. They had him line up over the A-gap 16 times in this game. And for reference, Shayne, the next highest player had 4 snaps lined up over center. And so the gross misuse of Keanu Benton is inexcusable at this point. Tomlin was actually asked about Benton in his Tuesday presser, until he said, we have really no plans, paraphrasing here, of course, we have really essentially no plans of moving him positions. How do you, as a head coach, as Tara Lawson as a defensive coordinator, as Carl Dunbar as the defensive line coach, how do you not recognize the strengths and weaknesses of the players you draft?
Yeah, as someone, you mentioned it, that's a fan of Wisconsin that watched him in college, did he play there in college a good bit? Yes. Was it because he was their best player and sometimes they just wanted him to get a matchup on the center? Also, yes. The problem with this type of situation is that it's very clear from a body type perspective, from a skill set perspective, from what he's shown you on the field throughout his 2+ seasons now, that he is just not a nose tackle. Like, this is not rocket science. He just literally isn't the position he plays. But they're like, well, that's who we want to be there. And I'm like, then you're asking him to fail. Like you're basically telling him to go out there and get crunched all game. So that way, when he does play over the B gap or over tackle, which he never does in a defense that normally you could see that happen for a player like him, he doesn't have the energy and the juice as a pass rusher that he probably would have if he didn't have to hold up at the point of attack as the primary nose tackle for this team. And I said this when we talked about this in our group chat for Still Curtain. He's going to end up being a really good 3-tech for someone else in a couple of years. Like that's what's going to happen. He's going to leave the team because they're going to say, well, he didn't perform well. And then someone else is going to scoop him up and he's going to play 3-tech and he's probably going to get 50 pressures. Like that's what I think is going to happen with him. And it's unfortunate because coming out, I had him favorably graded as a guy that could be that like Stephon Tuitt type, the same way I think Derek Harmon could, right? Like, and instead they're like, no, that's a nose tackle. And I'm like, there's no excuse for it. I just don't believe it.
Shayne, it kind of reminds me of, a little lesser version of that, but we kind of watched Javon Hargrave go through something similar.
Yeah,
he was pegged as that true 3-4 nose tackle for the Steelers. I thought he played out of position. The stats showed that he did, because in his first 2 seasons with the Steelers, he had 2 sacks in each year. And then eventually after his rookie contract, because they back at the time, they only could choose between paying him and Tuitt. They paid Tuitt. I don't think it was the wrong decision at the time. Obviously, Tuitt retired very early, played his last snaps at 27 years old. Nobody saw that coming. So we could beat that to death. But he goes on for the Eagles and amasses 23 sacks over three seasons in Philadelphia, earns a Pro Bowl there. And then he goes to San Francisco because he's playing in these better roles for him. And then he goes to San Francisco, earns a Pro Bowl with them, gets a 7-sack season his first year in San Francisco. I don't know. To me, it feels like such common sense to be able to look at Benton and say, all right, we are 3 years into this guy's career. You can see what he does well, and you can see where his struggles are. Why do you continue to put him in the area where he struggles? And Shayne, I do think the talent is there. In fact, Bleacher Report just had an article that came out in June. I went back and looked at it today just for reference, but in June, they did an NFL redraft of the 2023 draft. They had Benton going in the first round. And so it's not like the guy isn't talented. I think that he was one of the 2 or 3 best defensive tackles in that class outside of Jalen Carter.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not going to play him in the position where he can succeed, what are your expectations for him?
And again, to me, I don't really know what else he has to do to show them that he shouldn't be doing this. He has not performed as a run defender. And even as a 3-tech, is he going to be a down-to-down successful run defender? No, but he might be able to knife in and make some plays when he's not lined up in a position where they can just double team him and completely remove him from the equation. And that's what they're doing right now. Teams are able to do that with him. And sometimes they don't even have to double team him because admittedly, he's not the most powerful player, especially at the point of attack. But why is he your nose tackle then? Everyone on planet Earth knows this, apparently, except for the Steelers. And that's the type of stuff that you get with this team sometimes that I don't know what they're seeing in practice on film that makes them go, you know what? That's the best guy we got for this role. There's no way.
And Shayne, I look at players kind of similar to Benton in terms of how they win in the same draft class, even in Kobe Turner and Gervon Dexter. And it's like they are in positions to maximize their skill set. Benton is not. And I think that is honestly the biggest difference between them. It's why he doesn't have any production his first few years. He's shown the flashes. He can get there. It's just you are asking him to exuberate all of his energy trying to do things that is not his forte. He shouldn't be the guy that's asked to take on double teams. He shouldn't be lining up over the center. He should be the guy that tries to, as quickly as possible, knife into the backfield and cause disruption that way. My comparison for him, when I do my player comp articles for Steelers draft picks over the years, my most likely comparison for him was Malik Collins. And that's exactly how Malik Collins always won in the NFL, was his ability to penetrate as a 3 technique. And why Benton is not playing that is anybody's guess. The Steelers should have done more to get them out of that position. And if you want to talk about, well, there's no other solution. Well, to be fair, you just drafted a guy who is very stout, who is 340 pounds, who can absolutely play that 1-tech and 0-tech role if you ask him to. And that's Y.A. Black. I think that maybe that's possibly his best position. I don't think that he's been bad being the 4-eye and 5-tech either. But Black can do that. If you really want to maximize Benton's potential and make sure that he doesn't fail, you can make a switch. And so there are options here. It's just so frustrating to see the third year in a row, the complete reluctancy to try to get in a position, a good player in a position to succeed. Shayne, any other thoughts on Keanu Benton? I know there's a long rant we had there.
Nothing that won't make me just continue to rant about it. So we should probably just move on to the next thing here.
Shayne, let's talk about some snap distribution here.
I love this time of year with this, Dan.
Yeah, and I think that this is where, it's really early. I don't want to just bang the table too much about this early on, but it's like, all right. I mean, let's start with the obvious on the offensive side of the ball. Caleb Johnson got 1 touch in this game. In comparison, I'm filing through to pull up these numbers here. Let's see, so Caleb Johnson had 2 offensive snaps played in this game compared to 29 for Kenneth Gainwell. I mean, what's the reason for this outside? I mean, if you can't use veteran seniority as an excuse, what is the reason to play Kenneth Gainwell exponentially more than Caleb Johnson?
They didn't have any rushing success, and Gainwell's a better receiving back, I guess. He outsnapped Jaylen Warren. I want to repeat, like, he played more snaps than Jaylen Warren did in this game. I simply don't understand the logic there, because what is Kenneth Gainwell, other than being technically a more like dynamic receiver in terms of like route running and that type
I do not want him on the field over Warren.
That's what I'm saying. Like, what does he do better than him?
Yeah,
I don't think that the answer is anything. So the entire running back situation is odd to me, because if you were going to say, like, all right, Jaylen Warren is the firm, like, 80% of the snap guy, like, start the season, we want to see what he looks like as a full-time running back, and then go from there, I can live with that. I can say, okay, I know what Jaylen Warren is. He's a fun player. I think he could be really good. Instead of doing that, they're like, we're going to play him, like, about half the time, but not even really, because technically Kenneth Gainwell is going to play more than him. You lose me. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
In general, and we could remove the Caleb Johnson conversation from it, because I expected that based on his preseason usage and how the depth chart worked out and everything else. I'm not that shocked that he didn't really play in this game. I still think that if they want to have a successful running game this year, he's going to have to play and play a lot. But if he's not ready in their eyes, then they're not going to play him. So just taking him out of the equation, this cannot continue. I'm sorry. You just cannot play Kenneth Gainwell more snaps than Jaylen Warren.
Yeah, I mean, if I would have told you there's going to be 50-some snaps to disperse throughout the running backs, and you're going to get 29 snaps for Gainwell, 25 for Jaylen Warren, and then 2 for Caleb Johnson, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what are you expect to have success with that distribution there? So I'm not okay with that. It needs to change moving forward. Gainwell at best should be second in line for snaps, and it should be by a wide margin after Jaylen Warren, at least early in the season. And obviously you hope that Caleb Johnson can get up to speed sooner rather than later, because he's the pure runner with the most potential in this backfield, running this wide zone offense, where he was a really good college prospect, I thought. And so I hope to see that change. Shayne, also at wide receiver here, if we go through the snap distribution at wide receiver, the top 2 aren't surprising. 54 snaps for DK, 45 for Calvin Austin. I'm fine with that. And then you get down here, and we've got 10 snaps for Roman Wilson, 10 for Skoranek, and 9 for Scotty Miller. Is Roman Wilson just not getting it, or are you just refusing to give him an opportunity to show what he can do on the field? Because I was really disappointed to see him only get 10 snaps in this game.
I was too, but I also think that that's a byproduct of the offense. Like, I wonder if, for as long as Calvin Austin, which it seems like might be the whole year, is considered the number 2 receiver for this team, whoever the third receiver is just isn't going to play a lot. Because you look at it, all 3 of the Steelers' top tight ends played at least 26 snaps. And Pat Freiermuth actually played only 28. So Kenneth Gainwell snapped Pat Freiermuth, which that sentence makes me really upset. I was going to say that right now. I know it's different role, like, but it's still like insane to me. If that's how they're going to run this offense, where Johnny Smith plays 37 snaps and like all this stuff, and they can't run the 3 tight ends all the time, then yeah, like, there's a chance this third receiver might just not play a lot, or they might have a very specialized role. Maybe they bring him in on certain packages where they want him to be a target. But I think that they're just going to have a kind of collection of guys be the third receiver at different times for different reasons.
And then Shayne, the tight end position, Jonnu Smith outsnapped the group with 37, Pat Freiermuth with 28, Darnell Washington with 26. Nothing egregious here, and I'm not surprised by it at all. However, I would argue, and I think that I said this before the start of the season, Washington should play the most snaps. And I've got a great reason for it.
Yeah.
He can act as a third offensive tackle on any given play as well. The other two tight ends cannot. And Rodgers was asked about the tight end room, said it was the most talented he's played with in 21 years in the NFL. And he kind of alluded to Washington being the most talented guy of the group. He's got soft hands. He can run down the middle of the field. But specifically because of his blocking ability, I mean, we talked about how Jonnu and Freiermuth kind of overlap their roles a little bit. Washington does not. He is a unique mold of tight end where he can legitimately be an extra offensive tackle for you if left in the line. So I would actually like to see that distribution go up in his favor. If he's leading the team in snaps, I'm perfectly okay with that. I think it's probably best for your offense.
Probably. I will say something that saddens me, no targets for Darnell today or on Sunday. So
yeah,
that's got to change. We need to get the big guy involved a little bit, but still
he's such a weapon. I mean, he is so his catch radius and size is so much bigger than any linebacker or safety he's going to get matched up against. And he's got good hands. I mean, it's you don't see a player like that very often. So Shayne, moving over to the defensive side of the ball. Again, the alignment was the most egregious thing over the snap distribution there. Loudermilk ended up getting 31 snaps in this game over 24 for YA Black. So I'm like, well, that's a bit of a head scratcher. I know Black is a fifth round rookie in his first ever NFL game, but the strength difference between those two players is noticeable on film. So I think that should flip around very quickly. In fact, by week 2 this week, you should see Black outsnap Loudermilk. Whether we will or not, I think it's going to be close to a 1-to-1 split there. But that was something that I think needs to change.
Yeah, I don't need to see Loudermilk play again, honestly. I think I'm good on that. He was, I mean, about as bad as it gets in run defense. Like, he is truly movable in every way possible. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if the running back could scoot him out of the way if he tried hard enough. Like, that's just kind of where we're at with him. Yeah. And like, I get it. Like, you need bodies right now because Harmon's out and all that stuff. But yeah, I don't really care if Black isn't good. I'd rather see him get snaps at least so he can maybe be good at some point. Like, Loudermilk's not going to be good. I'm over that whole thing.
Yeah, Shayne. And the only other thing that was rough in this game, but I understand why there's not a lot you could have done about it, is Highsmith and TJ Watt are playing too many snaps. I don't want to see this continue already because what have we seen in recent years? These guys get burnt out by the end of the season. They're not the same rushers down the stretch. Highsmith played 57 snaps in this game, 56 for TJ Watt, and rookie Jack Sawyer saw the field for 15, split, and he was the only other edge on the field and splitting for both of those guys. That's a really, really poor distribution. If you look how good teams operate, they deploy like 2 full rotations of edge rushers. The Steelers don't have the talent to do that when Herbig is sidelined. But if he comes back here this week, you better see that turn around because you're going to wear out Watt, who turns 31 in October. You're going to wear him out really fast, and you're not going to get your money's worth out of that contract if you don't keep him fresh.
Yeah, it's tough, especially with the run defense the way it was, because you kind of need Watt to be out there to make them at least have to run away from him, and then you can try to do something about that and try to scheme that up a little bit. But he probably shouldn't be playing any more than like 40, 45 snaps a game at this point, like especially if you want him to try to be the version of himself that he's been. I think that was part of why he didn't do as well as the pass rushers, because he was out there constantly and he was, constantly trying to chase the run down from the backside, and probably was just gassed at times. I'm not going to lie. Like, it's week 1. You play pretty much every snap of the game. You're running guys down constantly. He still did it, like, especially as run defender, but like, you do not want him to have to do that every single week like we've seen in the past.
All right, Shayne, any other thoughts you want to get to on that before we move on?
I mean, really, the only other thing I wanted to mention with the snap counts, and it was kind of an interesting thing to take note of. I understand he obviously hasn't been practicing full time, and it's probably part of why. But Keanu Benson actually did outsnap Cam Hayward in this game, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, again, a lot of those snaps came where he was useless for the most part. But still, interesting to see that. But I'm sure that'll change once Cam's got a little bit more stamina going. So.
All right, Shayne, let's move on to our Steelers versus Seahawks preview matchup in week 2. The Seahawks are coming from the West Coast to the East Coast for a 1 o'clock game.
Mm-hmm.
Always tough when you're doing that. You get that jet lag. They're going kind of off a short week. They played Sunday afternoon this past week, and they're going to be playing the early slate on this coming Sunday. And so let's talk about some of the biggest matchups to watch. And so actually, let's talk about Seattle's performance before we even do that, Shayne. Did you get a chance to watch their game against the 49ers at all? I went back and watched most of it. I thought that the defense played about as tough as you could. Mike McDonald's obviously over there as the head coach now. I think that is the intensity that he brings to the table, and that could give the Steelers some fits offensively.
Yeah, the defense was pretty much as advertised, except for, unfortunately, Tariq Woolen kind of lost in the game in multiple ways. He was a guy that he's been up and down throughout his career. He's definitely a big play corner, but sometimes he does do some funny stuff, to say the least. Yeah, Brock Purdy could have had 4 interceptions in this game if Tariq Woolen was able to actually find the ball in the air. But outside of that, the defense was very good. I think they have a really good collection of talent. I don't know if, other than maybe Witherspoon, they have a true elite player on that defense, but I think as a collective with McDonald running the show, he's definitely got those guys playing very, very good football.
Yeah, I mean, and the Seahawks, they didn't put up gaudy numbers on offense. They only had 13 points in this game. Sam Darnold was held in check to 150 yards with 6.5 yards an attempt. No touchdowns, no picks, 56 QBR, and an 87 passer rating. Nobody really got off the ground. If anything, Shayne, it shows you when we get to the biggest matchups here, the one guy you've got to cover on this team is Jackson Smith-Njigba, who had 13 targets, turned those into 9 receptions for 124 yards. The same was the case when we previewed the Jets game. It's like, stop Garrett Wilson. There's nobody else that you've got to account for in the passing game except for Garrett Wilson. It's just like that for Seattle. You stop Jackson Smith-Njigba, you shut down the passing game. I'm not threatened by an old Cooper Kupp at this point. He's come off a really slow game here.
Yeah.
I don't think he's got much in the tank left, quite honestly. Elijah Arroyo, it's a rookie tight end. I mean, that's the guy that you have to stop on defense. Do you think the Steelers are going to be able to do a better job containing him than maybe what San Francisco did last week?
See, I want to say yes. The problem is a receiver like JSN is like the Steelers' worst nightmare sometimes because of the way he's aligned. At some point, like Patrick Queen's going to be covering him or something like that. Or, whatever it is, right? Like that's the type of thing that's going to happen. And I'm going to be like, all right, well, that's a first down. Like that's what's going to happen probably. So I think that they will hopefully be able to key on him, and specifically Jalen Ramsey. I'm assuming will draw that matchup a lot with JSN lining up in the slot often. But if they can't slow him down, the passing game could have some success. But you are correct to say that at this point, no one else is a threat. Cooper Kupp, despite having as bad of a game as he did, was still their second leading receiver with 15 yards. Only 5 players registered receiving yards in this game. That's insane for a full game. Like, it just, I don't really know exactly what the passing game is going to look like in total with this group. And they certainly tried to run the ball and tried to play that type of offense. But Sam Darnold has to be able to rely on someone else on this team besides JSN. Like, I don't know who's going to be at this point.
Yeah,
they have to figure something
and
out.
Shayne, you talk about only 5 players touching the ball. The other 4 guys on the team outside of JSN combined for 26 receiving yards on the game.
It's just incredible that could even happen.
Well, you think about how much talent they've lost over the past several years. Just you gained JSN, but you traded DK Metcalf to the Steelers. We're gonna be looking at that DK revenge game here. Tyler Lockett is no longer there. He was a staple for a long time. There's just nobody really to turn to. And so again, if your game plan is not in the passing game, shut down JSN, play inside out coverage on him, don't let him get the football, then I'm not sure what you're doing there. So that should be a pretty obvious thing that the Steelers should be doing in this game. In terms of their rushing, Seattle couldn't really get the ball off the ground this past week either. Kind of an even distribution between Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker. As a team, they had 26 carries for 84 yards. It's just 3.2 yards an attempt. They did punch in 1 touchdown. So not exactly coming off a great rushing performance either.
Yeah, the run game for them is interesting because, like, I expected Walker to be a bigger part of it this year because he fits that style that's being brought over a little bit more. But they just seem to love Charbonnet a lot, and, like, I just wonder if Walker's just kind of an afterthought at this point, which is crazy to me. I understand he's had injuries and other stuff, but this is one of the more explosive players at the running back position when he's healthy. So I'm curious to see if they can kind of take advantage of the Steelers defense the same way the Jets did with a similar running game as far as how they want to do it. But they certainly didn't do a good job of against the Niners, who were horrendous against the run last year, although they did add a lot of pieces to that run defense. So.
All right, Shayne, let's talk about some of the other matchups in this game. Alex Highsmith's going to be going up against Charles Crosshair, who's coming off a really good first game. He's a solid pass protecting left tackle in the NFL. Abraham Lucas on the other side. A matchup, obviously, that you hope that Watt can take advantage of over there. These pass rushers have got to get it going. Like Highsmith, again, as a pass rusher, he was very good in the first game. You hope that Watt can get to the quarterback here. You don't want him to go the first few games without hardly any action in the backfield like that. So who do you think has the upper hand in this matchup?
I do think that Lucas especially is very susceptible right now. He's a guy that hasn't played a ton of snaps in the past couple of years. Like, he's dealt with a lot of injuries. First game back, not so great. Definitely not. Did allow a sack in this game, a couple pressures. But if Watt struggles against him, that's officially when I think the alarm bells might need to start ringing a little bit. Like, he is the type of tackle that Watt typically abuses. And if he can't do that at this point, we are going to have to start worrying about a little bit. Because Highsmith, I do think, is good enough to beat Charles Cross occasionally. But Cross is one of the best pass protectors in the NFL over the past 2 seasons. Like, when he's on, he's also one of those guys that can be really hard to beat. So I'm going to give the edge to the Steelers for now, knowing what Watt is capable of. But if it doesn't go that way, again, going to have to start having some conversations potentially.
Yeah, Shayne, we talked about the Steelers' just abysmal run defense in week 1, gave up 182 yards, 3 scores on the ground. The Seahawks were completely held in check by San Francisco. Do you think that the Steelers look more like the 49ers did this past week, or more like they did in week 1? And it better be the former. They better be able to stop the run after the showing that they had in the first time around here.
I think that they can. I just wonder, like, if Cam's not 100% right now, like if he's not full go, this run defense just might not work. Like, that's kind of what I'm worried about. Is kind of like last year, if him and Watt weren't on the field, you could do whatever you wanted in the run game against this team. And I think even with Watt out there still affecting the run, if Cam's also not playing at a high level, we know Benton's not going to do it. He's had abysmal run defense grades for a while, and just watching the tape again, we talked about it. He's just not one of those guys that can hold up at the point of attack. I don't trust, certainly Loudermilk and Black, I want to believe, can be an impact, but he's a rookie, right? Like, I don't want to put too much pressure on him to be the reason that this team can defend the run. It's just honestly a crapshoot at this point, I think, whether or not they're going to be able to hold up super well.
All right, Shayne, we look at the Steelers offense and the matchups that they're going to be getting over here. Rick Woolen gave up a perfect 158.3 passer rating this past week, allowed some big plays to Ricky Pearsall down the field. You would hope the Steelers can take advantage of that. Would be really odd, Shayne, is if we see Woolen matched up against Calvin Austin, because the size differential and the frame between those players is enormous. Can Calvin still win down the field on a 6'3" long arm corner like that, 6'4"? Like, that would be an interesting matchup to see him go up and moss Woolen on one of those plays.
I think it's not out of the question. I think his type of build might actually be a good fit to go up against Woolen, because Woolen's an incredible athlete in a straight line, but the quickness is not quite there with him. I think he can certainly get lost on plays if you can run away from him and kind of cross his face. That's what you hope that Austin's able to do, but Metcalf probably knows him as well as anyone, so I wonder if he's going to want that match and be like, hey, I can do a move on this guy and I'll be able to get past him or whatever. He's the wild card, right? Because we know what Witherspoon is. I think the rest of the secondary is pretty solid, if not unspectacular. Can they take advantage of a guy that just, again, last week was about as bad as it gets in the secondary. So I'm very curious to see how that plays out and who actually ultimately draws him the most.
Yeah, Shannon, you mentioned that secondary, and Woolen was the guy we thought we would have had to anticipate being the problem there. But I do want to point that Josh Jobe in this game, 61 snaps.
Phenomenal.
He allowed 1 reception for 1 yard on 5 targets. So I'm like, maybe they've got something going for him there. That's a heck of a way to start the season. Ernest Jones, the linebacker, was really good in this game. Interesting to see Nick Emenwari, their first-round pick, get he was first-round pick, wasn't he? Or did he go with
he was a second-round pick.
Second round.
High second round pick.
He only got 4 snaps in the season opener there. So he's going to be one of those guys you got to ease into action probably. Then Leonard Williams, still Leonard Williams, still a good football player.
Yeah.
I think those are some of the big names that you'll have to count for the Steelers offense.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, Shayne, let's get to our game predictions. So we're going long here, but we love it because it's Steelers football. We are excited about the season. I'll kick it over to you first. We just saw, like I said, a game nobody expected, 66 total points, a 34-32 shootout win by Pittsburgh. Not complaining. I like the excitement of it. This game, Shayne, do you think it flips back over? Because like we said, the Seahawks are coming off of a 13-17 loss. Those are the type of games that we're looking more at. Steelers in general, like that's Mike Tomlin football. Do you think that we revert back to that way? How do you see this game going? And go ahead and give us a score prediction for week 2.
I think we get closer to that type of score because this is a team, especially in Seattle, who has a really good defense, and the offense has a lot of soul searching, I still think, to do. I don't think they're quite as ready to hit the ground running as much as the Jets were, which is funny to say in hindsight, but it is true. I do think the Jets were clearly ready to go as soon as kind of first quarter started there. So I think the Steelers, with the advantage of being at home, with Seattle coming off of a really hard-fought loss where there's a lot of snaps played in that game, especially for their defense, I do think the Steelers win this game. I think it's closer to like a 24-20 type of game, though, something a little bit more reasonable, a little bit more Steelers-like probably. Because I think the defense for Seattle is susceptible in some ways, especially, again, can you take advantage of Tariq Woolen? Can you run on them a little bit if you get things going? I do think those things are possible. And on the flip side, I still don't see the vision with Seattle's offense. I'm sorry. Like, it's not even that Sam Darnold played poorly. It's just he didn't really do anything because he kind of couldn't do anything, right? Like, it was pretty much JSN or bust. And he didn't turn the ball over, didn't do anything dumb, but they scored 13 points, right? Like, you can't really play that type of football and expect to put up 20, 25 points. So I think that they can be a little bit better, especially against a run defense that I'm worried about. But I do think the Steelers just have the edge being at home and with just a better offense.
Yeah, Shayne, I think it's a little bit surprising, at least, that the Steelers are only 3-point favorites in this game, despite being the home team here. That means that if they were on a neutral field, this is like a pick 'em type of game. I think the Steelers are better than the Seahawks. I really do.
I do too.
So even if it was straight up, or if it was even the other way around, if this game was in Seattle, I still might pick the Steelers, but especially because the Seahawks will be coming from West Coast to East Coast, getting that jet lag that's going from playing 4 o'clock last week to the 1 o'clock game this week. There's a lot of data that shows those games are really tough for those West Coast teams. And not only that, I think the Steelers, if you kind of go across the board, in most areas, I think they're more talented. I don't think that what we saw from Pittsburgh in week 1 is who this team is. I think their defense is a lot better than they showed in that game. I think their running game will be better. I don't think they're going to have an elite running game, but I think it will be better. And I think the offensive line will be better. I think that will be bold prediction here. That's going to be the worst game by the offensive line this season. And if it's not, we got some problems because that was pretty ugly. So I am predicting the Steelers to defeat the Seattle Seahawks in this game 23-17. I think they hold them under that 20-point mark, something they couldn't come close to doing against the Jets of all teams last week. But I think that is their wake-up call. Their defense is going to want to repair that reputation and say, hey, this is not who we are. We're going to come out here and we're going to leave a stamp in week 2. So those are our predictions. If you guys have any more, drop them down in the comment section below. Please leave us a like on this stream. And if you like what we do here, come back every week for more. We go live on this show every single Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time. Also, there are 2 other live shows going on this Still Curtain channel. You can check out the post-game show with Josh and Mark Powell. Mark is off right now on his honeymoon, but Josh is going to be doing the post-game show. He'll be live immediately after the Steelers game. Josh also goes live. Josh York goes live on Mondays at 1:30. So make sure you check out that show as well. Check out our written content on stillcurtain.com, where we are covering everything. You can follow Shayne on X at Shayne Kubas. You can follow me on X at Tommy Jaggi. You can download the Still Curtain podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Also check us out on YouTube or Ask Alexa to listen to the Still Curtain podcast. And thanks again for listening to the Still Curtain podcast.